For today's business news, we're joined on set by Stephen. Carl, Stephen, going to start with news of massive layoffs at Disney's theme parks in the United States.
28,000 jobs are to go, mainly at the parks in Florida and California, although some workers on Disney's cruise line and shops will be affected as well. The company says that 2/3 of those losing their jobs were part-time workers. The two resorts employ around 110,000 people in all, many of whom have been furloughed since the start of the pandemic. Disney has criticised the state of California for keeping its parks there closed, which it says has exacerbated the financial problems. Catherine Viette reports.
It's not the happiest place on earth at the moment, as the coronavirus deals a blow to the Walt Disney Company. Disney announcing plans to lay off 28,000 employees at its U.S. theme parks. The decision comes after California indicated the company's resort in Orange County would likely have to remain closed for the foreseeable future.
In light of the continued uncertainty exacerbated in California by the state's unwillingness to lift restrictions, we have made the very difficult decision to begin the process of reducing our workforce.
2/3 of those being let go are part-time workers. The company's theme park businesses account for approximately half of last year's $7 billion in profit. But earlier this year, the pandemic forced Disney's resorts and parks around the world to close, cutting into earnings. The company reported just over $4.7 billion in losses between April and June, its first quarterly loss in nearly 2 decades, as the theme park's business posted $2 billion in operating losses. Disney's other parks in Florida, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Paris have all reopened, but are operating at a reduced capacity to allow for social distancing. It was the second reopening for Hong Kong just last week, after the park was forced to shut again in July due to a spike in COVID-19 cases.
Now, the oil company Royal Dutch Shell has also announced major job cuts today. It's axing up to 9,000 posts by 2022. That's around a tenth of its global workforce. Demand for oil has slumped during the pandemic, which has kept prices low, and Shell's profits have slumped too as a result.
So, Stephen, how are the markets looking today?
Well, investors, of course, would have been watching the US presidential debate as well. Not much to move the markets, though, from the debate because there was no clear winner or detailed discussion of economic or financial policy. European markets starting the day today in the red. Shares in Shell are down over 1% on that job cuts news. In Asia, earlier trading focusing on things like new data on Chinese manufacturing showing an improvement in September. The Nikkei in Tokyo down 1.5%, falls in Shanghai but gains in Hong Kong.
Okay, well, moving to Germany now, and the first motor industry executive is facing trial over the Dieselgate scandal.
It's a trial that's set to begin later today. It's been 5 years since it first emerged that car makers had been manipulating emissions tests on diesel cars using so-called defeat devices. Now, the former CEO of Audi, Rupert Stadler, is facing charges including fraud and false advertising in court in Munich. Now, 2 executives from Audi's parent company Volkswagen have been jailed in the United States over this scandal, but Stadler is the first leading figure in the company to face trial in Germany. If he's convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison. Now, the American bank JP Chase is to pay $920 million to settle a legal case over market manipulation. The fines relate to trading on the precious metals and US bond markets. It's the biggest ever settlement to be agreed with the US commodity trading regulator. JP Morgan admitted to wrongdoing and said the traders concerned were no longer working at the bank.
And the city of Seattle, Stephen, has agreed to minimum pay for drivers of the ride-hailing services like Uber.
The new law will mean that these companies will have to pay drivers a sum equivalent to the city's minimum wage, which is $16 an hour. It's a new measure that will come into force from January, the decision modelled on a similar move by New York City in 2018. Ride-hailing companies officially consider their drivers to be independent contractors rather than employees, although there are legal challenges to that happening in many places around the world. Seattle's mayor says the pandemic has exposed the fault lines in systems of worker protection. The spokesperson for Lyft, one of the main ride-hailing players in the US, said the plan was flawed and would destroy thousands of jobs.
Okay, Stephen, thanks a lot for that business update.